see, it is connecting. Let me go to my 15 tabs. And we're live!
Hey!
Woo! Okay, now we remember our opening. What the fuck's my phone? And I'm going to connect to the YouTube. Wait, no, that's not it. I'm going to connect to the chat just so that we can like chat with people if we're like on a different screen.
Okay. Sound good?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. And I just remember that that's going to be like a feedback and shit, and I don't want to deal with that. Okay. But we are connected. We are live, so that's good to know. So, you ready to start a like fancy intro that we figured out?
Sure thing, yeah.
Okay. Should I go first, or do you want to be the first one?
What's my part in it?
You're the part where you say, like, it's the twink, and then I say it's the bear, and then we both say all these sexy hunks.
Okay, right. So I say that it's for me, and then you say it's for you, and then I say, and welcome all this, yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
that's the concept.
Okay, yeah. Sure, let's go.
Okay. You start.
Okay. Hey there, everybody. It's me, the aforementioned twink.
And it's me, the aforementioned bear. And you're all the sexy,
And
sexy
how's it
hunks.
go?
Oh, sorry.
Yep, how's it going?
It's going...
We both know what's going on. It's fine. Low energy. Woo!
I mean, everything I do is low energy. You could almost say that I have sloth.
Hey.
Hey.
That ties into the theme you sprung on me.
Oh my goodness! It's almost like it was intentional. Okay.
So, should we do a little breakdown of... Should we do a little...
Break it down with it?
Or should we just...
I actually did, just spend 15 minutes coming through the ridiculous amount of notes I have about obscure shit, and learned a little bit about what the 7 deadly sins are, and why the fuck we should care about that crap.
Okay.
So, basically...
We're talking about our favorite iterations of the 7 deadly sins in media and stuff.
Yep. I think we put that in the title, but honestly, I don't even fucking remember anymore. So, basically, what we call the 7 deadly sins didn't start out that way, because why the fuck would it? Why can't we just have a clear linear pathway for things? But nah, fam. It basically started by, like, one of those old Greek guys named Evagrius Ponticus, which is a name I cannot pronounce. And there was like 8 of them or something, and they were in Greek, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce anything in Greek, because I am not that bitch. But basically, they just sat, like, on a page somewhere next to a bunch of old...
Fuck, my homies speak Latin. That's coming from the Latin gang. Woo!
I mean, it's good that you said that, because let's talk about John Cassian. He was this old monk dude who was just like, you know what? I like this. But what if we gave them cool Latin names and we added a couple? Okay? So, he basically
So the Greeks came up with the first, and then the Latin, and then Rome stole from them.
And then the British, I think. I don't remember who Pope Gregory...
It's as though there was some sort of foundation of Roman culture stealing from Greek culture.
And then making it edgier.
Yep.
I mean, am I wrong, though? But yeah, so basically
The original weebs.
They were the original weebs. But yeah, basically...
They were just weebs for Greek.
Those filthy Greek weebs. Okay. But yeah, basically he came up with 2 other sins, because can you ever have enough evil things that will cast your mortal cell into eternal damnation?
Of course not.
Of course not. The first one was called Tristatia, which I did not pronounce correctly. And it basically boils down to depression. Like, pretty much just that. Like, there's a few terms they call despair, sorrow. My English version of Dante's Inferno calls it sullenness, so that's a mood. And basically that was bad because you can't be sad if you love Jesus. That's the rules, honey. If you're sad,
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously your fault. And the other one was vainglory.
Comes with the territory.
I know, right? Mental illness? Nah, fam. Jesus said no. And the other one's called vainglory, which is basically just like thinking you look good. But see, it's bad because you're not telling Jesus that it's his fault that you look good. And that's a big no-no. If you can't give it to Jesus, I mean, you're basically a pagan.
Yep. Everything's his fault except for the bad stuff, and it's your fault for not for not blaming Jesus for the good stuff enough.
Yeah. See, it's your fault you're poor, or a foreigner, or don't speak English, or choose to celebrate your heathen birthdays. Like, what the hell? But basically...
Oh, hey, by the way, my name's Seaweeds, not Ryens.
Oh, yeah, I completely forgot to tell each other our names. Yeah. Anyway, Seaweed. So, this all changes eventually, because who the fuck cares about Mr. John Cassian, whose name I totally remembered until I just read it on this page. And that is when Big Pope Daddy Gregory I said, fuck all of these stuffy Latin names, and we're just going to throw it up. You know, just mix it up some bit. We're going to throw those sad boy hours with Slav, because I mean, depression and being lazy is basically the same thing, right?
Sure.
And we're going to put, like, that vanity shit with pride, because, I mean, like, come on, like, at least that one actually makes sense. And it's like, you know what? We're not going to stop there, okay? We have 7 deadly sins now. It's a nice even number. And I'm going to make these 7 contrary virtues that no one's going to ever use. And it's going to be really fucking confusing because there's 7 heavenly virtues, which have fuck all to do with this entirely. You know, like faith, humility, prudence. We don't fucking know them, okay? We have these other ones now that no one's going to use. And so...
The 4 cardinal truths or something that I learned from Bayonetta.
Yes, okay, so I was actually looking into that. There's 4 cardinal truths, which are also Greek, because let's still shift from the Greek and make it about Jesus.
Yeah.
And then there are the 3 spiritual
like
truths, I think.
It's like fortitude, jubilation, temperance, and whatever that weird spider guy you fight on the water was.
Prudence? I don't know. I didn't play Bayonetta because I'm not cool and cultured. How dare I not play games where you have combos with hair-changing witch ladies.
Quick ad for Bayonetta, play Bayonetta, it's super fun.
Okay, so I found what they are. Prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance, and what are the theological virtues? Faith, hope, and charity. I love how hope is just like a virtue. It's just like... Also, but what's it... Like, I'm going to move on, but what is the difference between hope and faith? I'm just saying, like... That doesn't make sense to me. But basic...
I think hope is like a more generalized version, maybe.
I think that's fair. Yeah, but basically what happens is that... He said, yo fam, look at my cool list of things that aren't in the Bible, but you should do anyway. And people fucking lost their shit. They're just like, yeah, that's right. Just because it's not in the Bible doesn't mean I can't shame you for being a whore. Middle Ages, bitch. And all these people loved it so much, they started throwing into their biblical fan fiction. Like I mentioned, Dante's Inferno, pretty obviously in the Purgatorio, but it's also used a lot in Inferno, along with fun things like... being a moneylender, read Jew, and being a sodomite, which was weirdly enough a lot of Dante's friends, so I thought that was pretty interesting. Honestly, the Inferno is just the prince with more biblical imagery.
Tutorial is where he walked up the mountain with all the souls that had their eyes and mouths just sewn shut.
Yes, and don't ask me what Paradiso is about, because I only watched the Overly Sarcastic Productions video, and I haven't read the rest of the series.
I watched that one too. I put together that it's just very contradictory because, like, before there were planets, there were heavenly bodies, and light and speed were the same thing, and God is a book made of light, but also the light is made of God at the same time, and it's just nonsense to begin with because they're playing Calvin ball with trying to explain what's in the sky, so...
I mean, this is true, but I would straight up pay for, like, an anime that's just, like, a word-for-word literal interpretation of that, and then eat a Cosmic Brownie and just, like, binge-watch the entire thing. That would be a fucking trip. I might have nightmares, but it would be a trip.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit weird because there's not that much conflict and resolve in, what am I thinking of, in Inferno, Limbo, or Paradiso. It's more just like
it's like a walking sim almost.
It's structured more like a documentary than a typical story.
See, I totally feel that, like... And I think it's really interesting because Dante really doesn't have any agency or impact in the story. Literally, the story begins with him, like, trying to walk towards his goal, and they're just like, no, bitch, we're going to use the phrase she-wolf in the 14th century, and then you get to go to hell for some reason.
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway, just to finish the introduction. But basically, with stuff like that, or there's this other guy named Bensfield who, like, made up a bunch of demon OCs, ooh-woo, and connected them to the 7 Deadly Sins, so that's fun. And eventually, it just boiled down until we just threw it into any anime we wanted because just like, you know, the classical elements or other things like that, it's a fun, like, you know, thought to, like, structure character archetypes in. Yeah. And that's my thought on it, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hardly know what we're talking about because you really did just spring the theme of the episode on me, like, an hour ago. An hour ago.
I mean, I did try to talk to you about it before, but, I mean, life's busy, fam, so, like, that's just what is.
Yeah, no, that might have been my fault, too. I get it.
I'm not like, but, like, that being said, we could always, like, probably do, like, production episodes earlier on so we can prepare more, but whatevs. Let's hear about what your favorite 7 Deadly Sins adaptation is. I want you to wow me, okay? I'm expecting a lot from this. I'm not expecting a lot from this. I'm just like, whatevs.
Okay. Well, I don't think I'm gonna wow you on what it is, but I do want to wow you on my devotion to the content. It's Fullmetal Alchemist.
What? How would I have guessed that?
Yeah, but Fullmetal Alchemist is probably my favorite, just my favorite anime, just my favorite manga from a writing standpoint. It's a very contained story. It doesn't keep going on and on and on like Naruto or anything. It
Subtle dig.
It saw that mission statement to the end, and it did a lot of good storytelling and character creation and stuff like that. I just think it's very good story, very good art, very compelling characters and fight scenes. And I'm saying this as someone who read the manga before watching the show. The contentious shows, both the original
and Brotherhood, right?
Format and Brotherhood.
Okay.
But I don't know. I think it's a very good story. So for those of you who, for some reason, haven't heard of Fullmetal Alchemist, no shade. It's a very, very good, in my opinion, manga from 2003. I am horrible with authors' names, so let me just get that up real quick.
Yeah, no worries. I know I read a good portion of the manga up to a point, but I haven't seen much of the anime.
Hiromu Arakawa
Okay.
her name.
I know as a female author. That's bitchin'.
Yes, it is, indeed.
Oh, yeah.
But, she's a manga, and it started around 2001 or 2002.
Wow.
And I pulled up a list of the volume numbers right here, and looking back at it now, it adds a whole nother level because the final tally, it's a very what am I thinking of? A very, I guess, spiritually diverse series, I guess would be the word for it. It's very much Neil Gaiman, where they've kind of drawn a bunch of different philosophies and a bunch of different...
You mean my shit? I love that fucking shit.
Yeah, a bunch of different philosophies and arcana to kind of create the world that they live in. And looking back at it right now, the final number of chapters is 108.
Holy shit!
Yeah, which I can only guess based on the rest of the series had to be done on purpose, because 108 is another very spiritual number. It has to do, it's mainly in Buddhism. It comes from like the 108 different emotions based on the different numbers of, I don't know it that well, but like Buddhist prayer beads have like 108 beads to them. It has to do with like going through the 108 emotions of life in order to like perceive nirvana, I think. And I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream also did a iteration on this where all the main characters have been being kept alive and tortured for 109 years to kind of display the main villain Am's like villainy towards life and humanity, where even after 109 iterations, he's beyond physical capacity. He's beyond humans' comprehension for what suffering and what torture can be displayed, because emotions kind of an analog for suffering in Buddhism and stuff like that.
That makes sense.
I'm kind of speaking out of my ass here, but I don't know. I kind of have a feeling some of the stuff, I think. But,
well, I mean, we can always ask our sexy hunks to correct our somewhat flimsy knowledge of spiritualism at some point, you know. Have them roast us.
Please, prove yourselves the hunks that you are, and inform us and enlighten us in any way, shape, or form.
Please, like, we have so many different things that we're talking about. We need help clarifications.
Yeah. There's so many things we're talking about. None of them can be correct. Not all of them can be correct. But yeah, just going back through a list of the chapter names again, just to give myself a quick refresher, because I read this like close to a decade ago. But it's anyways, I was talking about Fullmetal Alchemist. Fullmetal Alchemist, it's a series about these two brothers in a world where magic kind of exists, but it's magic based on, it's like a hard magic series, not like what am I thinking of, like Harry Potter, where you have a wand and you can just cast spells willy-nilly and stuff.
There's a lot of hard consequences to magic and specific rules and that type of thing.
Yes, it's like all the magic in this world is component-based, and you need material and science and to know the actual math behind what you're creating with the magic, and that's kind of what I really like about it. I really like hard magic systems like this, and Dungeons and Dragons, where you have specific rules and specific patterns and stuff. There's this book I had on my list that was written by this, I don't know why I can not remember his name. It was like the Red something, once like the Red Vanguard, but he talks about really bad books on YouTube. and he wrote a book called Micro God, where...
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, fuck. Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, but he had a book called Micro God that I wanted to check out. That sounded really interesting. It's basically this guy finds out that he has the power to control the universe around him, but only in like a 5-foot sphere around him. And anything that exits that sphere is no longer under his control anymore. So it, like, hard magic like that is what really interests me. And Fullmetal has that in spades, where they need to draw these mathematical equations on the ground in the exact right order just to move a large amount of rock from one area to like 10 feet over, or to turn this piece of coal into a piece of chalk or something like that. And it's just very patient and very interesting how they implement that kind of stuff. So there's a character in it named Roy Mustang, where his whole deal is that he's really good at this fire magic. The magic's called alchemy in this, where they need to turn one thing of a substance into another thing of a substance. But one of the leading characters, Roy Mustang, has a glove on his hand that's the center of his magic. It's kind of like his focus, where it's made of cloth that when he snaps, it creates sparks. And because of the runes on the glove itself, he can turn that spark into like a firebolt from his hand.
So what you're telling me is that the wizard has cast Fireball.
Yes, basically. It's like, or what am I thinking of? In DMC, where, I can't remember her name, but what's her name walks around with, the stencil for the magic seal and the spray paint of the magic liquid that she just, like, puts the stencil on the ground, spray paints it, and then she has the seal all ready to go in the formation and can just cast a spell like that.
Trying to see if I could look up the character, but I'm not familiar with Devil May Cry.
It was in this DMC remake. They do it in like one scene. They just kind of establish it, and that just kind of stuck out to me. Like, yeah, I like that. I like how they're doing that. Yeah, it's a complicated spell, like a weird, in a weird shape. Of course, you have like a stencil and like the materials in a spray can to just kind of do it up real quick.
Honestly, I do love that. I'd love to see like more, I don't know, kind of like those, I guess, magic ring components in like urban fantasy, because a lot of, like, urban fantasy, they'll have, like, soft magic systems, and they'll never really, like, play around of, like, what it would be like to have these very complex, very ornate magical spells in a, like, modern setting, and so that is, like, a really intriguing thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can get that. I'm getting really off topic, I'm sorry. Anyway.
That's fine.
The reason I'm bringing up Fullmetal Alchemist in this specific topic is that the main conflict comes from this group of 7 different individuals identifying themselves as the 7 deadly sins. So like the first 2 we meet are lust and gluttony. And lust is this very buxom woman who has a very glib tongue and like a really smooth talker and getting her way through politics and stuff, while gluttony is this round little guy who just likes to eat stuff and is kind of like obsessed with being her partner, not for any real superficial reasons. It's just more of like a existence reason. Like they kind of exist because of each other, and that's kind of a little hint for later on. And I really am not sure if I want to get into like spoilery talk for a lot of this, because I personally am really sensitive to spoilers. I probably would have freaked out about the Roy Mustang with the fire glove thing. I would have freaked out if I heard that, and I didn't know about that coming from the book. But then at the same time, it is a series from
the early
about
2000s.
2 decades ago. Yeah. About 20 years ago.
I mean...
So, what do you think? Should I put a spoiler warning here? Should I try to steer clear?
I feel like it's ultimately up to you. I think, like, you know, if you do spoil it, this is kind of like where we're talking about our favorite things. And give me a second to get my thoughts together. I think it would be good to put a little bit more information, so mild spoilers. But like you said, it did come out about 20 years ago. But for anyone listening, you know, this is a thing where we talk about our favorite stuff. It's in some ways a review, and really good reviews are always going to give you a little bit more of a taste of what's going to happen. You know?
Okay, fair. So I'm going to say mild spoilers ahead. I'm not going to get
mild
into
spoilers.
Major plot twists or character reveals or stuff like that. And I'm going to do my best to not talk about the dog scene. Ryan.
How did you know I was thinking about that? Sorry, what?
It's Fullmetal Alchemist. It's the dog scene. Everybody knows the dog scene. Everybody knows that thing.
Okay, but like, it fucked me up so much, okay? Like...
Yeah. My heart goes out to that because when I was, like, 10 years ago, when I read that for the first time, and I was getting really involved with the character, it's, like, it's the first main turnaround in tone of the book. Before then, you have this wacky story about this guy going through this town in the middle of the desert, and then saving this little mining company from being taken over by this big bad businessman and stuff like that. And then he goes into town to talk to people about, like, I need to save my mother. Hey, this guy, he seems pretty good with life alchemy and stuff. Let's go talk to him. And then from there, it turns into horror. Just like actual horror out of nowhere. And I cried. I cried reading that. And I'm just going to leave it at that. It is a very emotional scene, a very emotional turnaround. The entire series changes after that point. But then at the same time, it does it in a very thematically appropriate way. But anyways, mild spoilers from here on out. Not talking about the dog scene.
So sad.
So, yeah, so... Of course, there's 7 characters in... I mean, there's more than 7 villains in the story itself, but the main kind of jobber villains are the depictions of the 7 deadly sins. So, Lust is a very... what am I thinking of? She's a very beautiful woman who's good at, like, talking her way through espionage-type things. Gluttony kind of eats his way through a lot of his enemies, and it is just much more of a hard hitter than Lust is, even though Lust has, like, a knife hand, kind of like Lady Dimitrescu, so that's kind of a weird analogy now that I'm thinking back on it, like, yeah, she does kind of have the Lust claws. But anyways, another recurring one is Envy, who is, whose whole thing is that they can change appearance and,
that makes
like,
sense.
Body morph and stuff, because it's envy. It wants to be something else. It wants that. It wants it looks at something else and strives to emulate it. So, of course, envy would be a shapeshifter, and that kind of makes sense in that area. But I think what I really like about the Seven Deadly Sins in Fullmetal Alchemist itself is that you systematically see them breaking down. Like, spoiler, that good wins in the end. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's not especially, yeah. But like, as the two main characters, Edward and Alphonse, go through the series, they kind of systematically break down both the identities of the Seven Deadly Sin individuals, the individuals depicting them, because they're not exactly human. They're more than human. They're different. But you see like lust being taken down in a very what am I thinking of? In an ugly way, where it renders them, where it like plays off of their physical appearance.
Okay. So it's very apropos to, like, their whole character. Just
Defeat him, kind of like that. And it's just a very interesting way of both addressing the sins and defeating them, I guess would be the word. Because in like any other series, they'd be like everlasting, the gods of the world, watching.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's really interesting
Or anybody else doing their normal.
I was going to say, it's like, to me, like, that's a really interesting concept, especially when you, like, think about it in terms of alchemy, because alchemy is a lot about, like, the purification of substance and stuff like that, and so, in a sense, things like pride or envy, all of these are, like,
totally dropped out for me when you something.
Oh, sorry. So, like, in terms of alchemy, I think it's really interesting, like, how the seven deadly sins exist, because in a way, the sins are, I guess, purifications of negative human components, and so, in the same way that, like, gold is purified, so is, I guess, envy or lust, and so they're very much, like, almost a homunculus of, I guess, human emotion.
Yeah, they're definitely representations of that human emotion and human personality distilled and purified into one being. For sure, I'd say they represent that. And it's very interesting to see them all operating as like separate entities against the individual. They're not necessarily together. They're associated, of course, but they have different goals.
That makes sense.
Different goals throughout the series. And I think that's a pretty creative use of them not to be like omniscient, but to be something that the characters actually like interact with, or win against, or lose against, or something like that. It kind of represents that these things are tangible in the real world, and at the same time, they're able to overcome us, but we are also able to overcome them, in a sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. I don't think that's like a really... Sorry, I'm just blanking out for a second. Like, low energy. I think that's like a really interesting like analysis, and it's just a really good take on it.
Yeah, I won't put all of my stuff in the front I will put all of my discussion in the front half of this. I'll let you step in with your thing so I can
Okay, so
against it.
thank you. So, since this is like a debate, like persuasive podcast, I just want to let you know your waifu is trash and my obscure shit is better. So there we go. No, I'm teasing. But what I'm bringing to the table today is a webcomic, imagine that, called Windershins, which is a very fun name, which basically...
Webcomic, I got scared for a second.
Let me tell you about Homestuck. No. I'm teasing. I'm not going to do that today. Yeah. So first of all, I'm just.
Something you said it.
Windershins.
What did his name was? Windershins?
Yeah, it's like an old-timey word that means like counterclockwise. I believe it's used occasionally in like. I know it's used occasionally like in magic, like in terms like that for specific reasons, but basically it means walking counterclockwise. That's the sort of like common definition of it. The name isn't really that relevant, it's just like, a fun name. But basically, before I get into the depths of what Windershins is about, I want to talk about genre for a little bit, if that's okay. So, everyone, wow, look at me just assuming shit. Most people are familiar with steampunk, right? Speculative fiction set usually during the 18th century, mostly around Victorian times, that emphasizes steam technology, right? So there is a fantasy counterpart to steampunk that was initially coined by the Fulgios. They are a webcomic team who made Girl Genius, called Gaslight Fantasy. And basically what Gaslight Fantasy is pretty much just a fantastical interpretation of steampunk. It still has Victorian-era, it still has steampunk technology, but it's set more into fantastical or other speculative fiction genres that are just not hard sci-fi, which is usually what steampunk is most of the time. And give me 1 second.
Okay, so it's like brass cogs and pistons, but also unicorns, then?
It can be. It depends on the story. In the originator of the genre, give me 1 second. I'm trying to remember. Sorry, I'm just trying to look something else up as well. In the original comic, Girl Genius, it was basically set in this mad scientist sci-fi setting, but it had a lot more political intrigue. It had zombies. It had things like this that were fantastical, but they weren't hard sci-fi. It was very much a soft sci-fi setting with a lot more fantastic, speculative elements. Not necessarily high fantasy, though you obviously could write high fantasy with steampunk elements. I do it all the time. But it is much less hard sci-fi, less emphasis on how gears and steam works, and more just inane bullshit. So, I mentioned Girl Genius is a good example. I would also classify something as Chester 5000, though it is very much not safe for work if people want to look that up, just saying, which is basically a lovely, albeit erotic story about a man who builds a sex butler for his wife. And then it gets weirdly wholesome somehow. So that's just something that exists. But Windershins, I would also classify as gaslight fantasy. Very much Victorian-esque, very much has steampunk elements, but very much is set in a fantastical thing because of its magic system. So you were talking about hard magic systems versus soft magic systems, and I would probably classify this as a hard magic system. It doesn't really have much... Sorry. I'm listening? So it doesn't really have too many strong, I guess... What's what I'm looking for? I want to say it has a lot of negative components towards the caster as so much as, I guess, what can happen if you fuck up your spell. But here's basically how the magic system works in Windershins. So instead of like just casting energy and doing what the fuck ever, it's, I guess, much more similar to, I guess, what you call Wiccan or pagan beliefs, where you spend a lot, and this is me with a very limited understanding of neo-pagan religions, but from what I understand of some spells and some practices, a lot of it involves summoning specific energies or spirits or deities to help you with your casting for whatever goal you want to achieve, right?
Okay, so it's material, ritualistic type stuff.
Yeah, so very much the idea of the magic circle, though the way it's depicted in the comic is a lot less component based, so we don't have to deal with elemental objects at each of the cardinal points, or walking Windershins, or imagining a cone of energy above your circle, any of like that stuff. They don't get into that type of thing. It's mostly the idea of you having specific magic circles and a few like other components like an offering or like a focus to specifically summon the spirit. And the idea is that you're essentially summoning emotions, if that makes sense. So you're talking about like the 108 emotions that you see in like Buddhism. So basically imagine any emotion, right? Name an emotion, anything you can think of. So let's see. Yeah, just pick one.
Nostalgia.
Nostalgia. Ooh, that's a good one. I love that. So basically, you would be able to summon nostalgia, and nostalgia is, in this sense, a kind of spirit or daemon, or whatever you really want to call it. And the wizards can make... Give me a second. The wizards can essentially make deals with it, or they can use that feeling of nostalgia to imbue objects. So there are trains in this story, and they are imbued with impatience, which makes things run faster because it's impatient. And so you can... Yeah, and it's very clever, like, the ways they can do it. And so there are objects... There are objects that are imbued with emotions. Sometimes people make literal deals with emotions. And these spirits, if they're like... And there's also this concept of being malformed. Essentially, if a wizard summons a spirit and it doesn't correctly, I guess, complete the transaction, if it, like, leaves the Ouija board open or whatever, the spirit essentially becomes restless, and depending on the type of spirit, it can really fuck shit up. So, if you're, like, not careful, you can just have a giant sorrow spirit destroying a theater, which may or may not have happened in the story. Sorry, spoilers. And each of the spirits, you only get to, like, know a few of them because there's a lot. Obviously, there's a arguably almost infinite amount of definable human emotions out there, if you could think of a word for it. But...
Right. Well, I mean, according to Buddhism, 108, but continue.
I mean, this is true. Though I think there's a special way that they calculate that. I literally just... I only looked at it for, like, 5 seconds, so I don't even know. Yeah.
There's gray areas and stuff.
Yeah, and there's obviously different ways that you can categorize emotions. I think maybe it was Jung had like the 6 basic emotions, but let's move on from that diatribe. But basically...
It has to do with like facial features and liquid brain and stuff like that.
Yeah, the idea of like... I can't even get into it. Yeah, but there's basically like 6, I guess, primal reactions that we can physically experience.
I know what you're talking about. Like, disgust, anger...
Yeah, disgust... I think, disgust, fear, anger, sadness, happiness, and there's one more. Maybe curiosity? I don't remember anymore. Surprise! That was it. It's surprise, which is different from fear.
Yeah, right.
Yay! We remember them! Now just remember the zodiac signs. Anyway. But basically, you start off with this main character. And he has a name, and I don't remember it, but... I should just look it up, because that's what called being a good, like, podcaster is, Ryan. I should have probably took notes, but why the fuck would I do that? Like, why the fuck would I become prepared? That's not a dig. I'm just like, why didn't I write any of this shit down? Okay, so, basically we have this main character, and he's a magician, which is different from a wizard because he does street magic. He is also a, like, magic magician, so he can do, like, spells and shit. So they play around with, like, that wordplay quite a bit. So he's, like, doing card tricks, but he's also just, like, let me do this, like, level 1 spell I did before I got kicked out of university. And that's because he has this itsy-bitsy problem. You want to hear about it? He was just like, let me think. Okay, I have the cast list, thank God. Okay, his name is Sidney Malik, by the way. Anyway. Oh, also, he is of... I don't know what exact, like, ethnic group, but he's of Indian descent, by the way, which is just... I love that, like, representation. And I'm going to get into, like, a big part about the diversity later on, but... Basically, he has this curse that... he accidentally steals things. He doesn't mean to. He's walking along. Oopsie daisy. Here's a purse. Like, here's your keys. Here's a bunch of panties. Oopsie daisy. It's a panty raid. That's not canonical, but there is some really funny fan art that, like, has that written in, and I love that. Anyway, but it's like, yeah, basically he's a, like, magic pickpocket. And I'm just, like, throwing in, like, the inappropriateness, just, like, in there, like, sprinkling in the demonetization.
No better combinations than sleight of hand and kleptomania.
I mean, pretty much, like, that is, like, definitely kind of, like, the theme for him. And what happens is that he accidentally steals a priceless artifact. It's the Mark of Thieves. And basically, if you steal that shit, you're the best thief. And he's just like, well, take it back. But here's the thing. The only way to get rid of the Mark of Thieves is for you to be dead. So he's just like, well, now I got a bounty on my head. Oopsie daisy.
For a second, I thought you were going to say the only way for you to get rid of the Mark of Thieves is for it to be stolen from you.
Yes, but they have to kill you to steal it. I know, you think, like, I mean, it's like, on one hand, you're just like, that isn't, like, very thievery of you, but, see, the thing is that it's basically an artifact imbued with greed, right? And greed, sure, it's like, taking things, but very much, I think it's the idea of no honor among thieves, of, like, stabbing them for the pretty bauble because it's shiny. So, like, that's sort of, like, the way that I think about it. So, basically, they do shit, they go to a cave. Oh, he has a friend now. Her name is Harriet Barber, and she is a badass Victorian woman who's also a bounty hunter, so we love to see it, and I'm now realizing it. I might have based way too many D&D characters off of her unconsciously. That might just be something that happened, because honestly, the characters are a little bit too similar, so let's just not think about that.
You write what you know.
I do write what I know, and I do like badass Victorian characters. I love it, like, I love when it's steampunk, and it's just, like, a badass, like, chick just, like, doing things in, like, a battle skirt or whatever, like, that's my aesthetic. But yeah, so she's a bounty hunter, she has a dog that can smell magic, which is cool, and she smokes a pipe, and that's badass. And they basically become, like, this, like, oddball team to find the Mark of Thieves, and not die, and also stop this random douchebag from murdering them, so. And basically, they meet up with greed, and you're just like, that's just something that happens, and you forget about it. Well, here's the thing, right? It keeps happening a bunch of times, and this whole plot that I'm not going to get into, because spoilers, fam. But basically, throughout all the adventures with time-traveling bakers, and with just really good, like, crime noir plots that just really get me. It was just such a good plot. And, like, all this other stuff, just...
You are crime noir, boy.
I am a bitch for crime noir. Like, there's bombs and princesses and so much bullshit. And there's a great amount of just, like, a lot of crime noir and intrigue plots just, like, peppered in there. And I'm just like, bitch. But basically, they meet like, all 7 deadly sins.
I swear to God, your Greystone's gonna... okay, I just had a quick bit.
You good? Everything good?
I was just gonna say that I swear to God, if you ever get murdered, I hope your Greystone says, if I was murdered, it better have been on a train.
Oh my goodness, I'm writing that down. Okay, like, I am literally grabbing this notepad that says, a note from the voices in my head, apropos, and writing, if I ever get murdered, I hope it's on a train.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel so bad for not getting the answer to Murder on the Orient Express earlier, but... Sorry, just like side note.
I'm not a Hercule Poirot individual myself.
I mean, you could always read her other book series. It's about an old lady who constantly thinks about that one time that she witnessed domestic violence. I'm not even joking, there's actually a plot point from They Do It With Mirrors.
Hero?
No, the other one, Miss Marple. Hercule Poirot's just a foreigner that suddenly speaks Belgium, and everyone's just like, why are you here, foreigner? There's a lot of anti-foreigner sentiment in the books. Like, that's kind of like ick.
Because his little Greystone brought him there or something.
Something like that. Okay, where was I though? But
Didn't mean to tear you away.
no, you good, fam. But basically, they meet all of the sins, and so here's the thing. So they have like spirit forms, and they're pretty on the nose. Greed is like a djinn, so that's pretty like self-explanatory. Pride is pride is like a peacock. Some of them aren't as like don't make as much sense, but I think one of my favorite characters they had from the series was Envy, and I love the Envy chapter just so fucking much, because you basically follow this like mild antagonist, and he's very much a sour grapes type person, and I also love like how Envy kind of operates. So to me, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. So for the character, it's always like, ugh, why is everyone better than me? I don't want to work hard and do shit. I just deserve it. And so Envy just, like, walks along when they go to the magic lodestone in, like, Nepal. And he's like, hey, bro, you want magic powers and also to shove your success in that blonde guy's face? And he's like, yes, I totally want to do that for not homoerotic reasons. And so the Fox Envy guy just says, sure, let me just give you all of this power, and you can just steal people's abilities. Like that one specific character from Heroes that I can't tell you more about because it has so fucking many spoilers. But basically, like, he can steal people's abilities to do anything, right? Like, speak languages, or I guess I'm not really sure, like, what extent it could be like, but for instance, if he steals somebody's ability to speak Nepalese, this person is essentially a mute for the rest of their lives, and possibly incapable of learning languages. They don't really specify it for the victims, but it's like, it's really fucked up just, like, how many skills this guy steals, and he just, like, goes for, like, Europe gallivanting and learning things, and trying to shove it in this blonde guy's face, and it doesn't work, and it's just a really great sort of cross-section of what envy would do to a person, how it would affect them, what sort of an envious mindset would be, and I just really love how they have that sort of character that was a parallel to the, I guess, sin. Just really well done. And he plays a slightly small part, like in the ending of the story, but basically they also have people who are supposed to who are like vessels for the spirit, and that gets into the plot that I'm not going to talk about because spoilers. But let's get into the part I really like, and that's diversity, okay? So there is just a good fucking sexy amount of racial diversity in the webcomic. Like I said, let me find his full name again. Sidney Malik, I believe, is of Indian descent, so he is... I'm not going to, colorize it, but, he is definitely a bit darker. Then there's Alexa King, who's another character. She's from the future, and she is just a badass punk, and I love her, and she's also dark-skinned. And moving into sort of the, I guess, past the first arc of the story, we're being introduced to a Nepalese and a Pacific Islander character, and it's so fucking good, and I love how they're including not only racial diversity in, like, geographic places where obviously you would have people who aren't white, but also the author is making sure to include racial diversity for the time period that actually makes sense, and it's just very organic. But here's the real question. Ask me if there's gays in this, Seaweed. You there? There are so many gays in this, and at first you're just like, where's the gays? But see, I have a little rule, okay? So in webcomics, I noticed something.
Okay, real quick. On a scale of the Catholic Church to Steven Universe, how many gays?
Ooh, that's a hard one, because
not a bad one. On a scale of Catholic Church to Steven Universe, how many non-closeted gays?
Okay, so that's the thing, is that, like, there are a lot of gays, but there's also a lot of, like, people that are pretty queer-coded that you can basically say are gay, but they're not, like, explicitly said, like, oh, this person's a gay. I'm going to put it as 7, because it's pretty gay, and it might be gayer, if that makes sense. So,
wait, 7 gays? 7 deadly sins?
oh, look, conspiracy! No, so, like, let's go through all the people we know are canonically gay. So, I mentioned Alexa King. She's a time-traveling baker. Basically, this one asshole is just a future gay, because the gays only live in the future, of course. Except, you later find out that the police chief is a big old gay. What? Lesbians? And at first they're subtle about it, and they're just like, is it lesbians? But then later on, another character who you didn't really, like, know about, because she showed up, like, fucking whenever, she was just like, oh, by the way, I used to be secret lesbian lovers with the police chief or some shit. And you're just like, what? Actual lesbians? Okay, I'm trying to think, there's a few other ones I wanted to mention. One more time.
You'll get that sometime.
I know, which is actual lesbians? You mean you're not supposed to have a singular lesbian? Oh, I forgot to tell you my theory. So, just like small aside, I have this theory in webcomics called the inevitable lesbian theory, right? It's basically the idea that a webcomic will start super straight and super cis, but as it goes on and on, it will just get more racially diverse and more gayer. So, basically, if you look at something like questionable content or dumbing of age, you will see it. The cast is just so fucking gay. Or Alchemist is another example. Like, that stuff started, like, so straight, and now everyone's trans in that comic. But, I'm not even joking. Pretty much everyone is trans in that comic. But, anyway, there's a few others. There's also the grandfather, who you're just like, oh, that's straight, until you realize it's very gay. He is like the big ol' is bisexual. And at first you think, oh, he's just flirting with lust, because it's literally the embodiment of lust. But then he starts hitting on other guys through the comic, and you're just like, this man is a bisexual. And I'm just like, good representation. Like, we love to see it.
This man is the lust.
I know, because maybe it's bisexuality, maybe it's just thoughterry on account of the human embodiment of sin.
It's a bisexuality.
And then, now this one is queer-coded, but I really see no other interpretation for this character. There is also, wait for it, asexual representation. A woo? A what? Asexuals don't exist.
Oh.
No, but see, there's only this character, and basically, he hates everyone, and he hates people, and he can see souls, which is honestly a mood, but... See, the reason why I think he's asexual is because it's literally an entire conversation where he's talking to Lust, and Lust is just like, oh, my masculine/feminine wiles won't work on you. And it's like, yeah... whatevs, and so basically Lust has to resort to other means of emotional bonds to, like, fuck with him. But I'm just like, if Lust literally looks at you and says, like, yeah, this isn't going to, I can't seduce you, I have no other idea how you're supposed to interpret that besides asexuality, It's like, when Lust is just like, I'm not even going to try to, like, give you a boner, like, that feels pretty ace to me,
Well, I mean, Lust is a weird one to categorize, because I think the actual depiction of it is just described as putting forth like a great amount of devotion or admiration towards something undeserving.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily of a sexual nature. It's really more of like an overzealous for unjustified reasons.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I mean, that's, like, at least my headcanon until, like, the writer is just like, oh, I forgot to explicitly say that this person's asexual, even though, I mean, like, let's go have some Sapphire and her friends moments. Terms like asexuality or even or bisexuality wouldn't really be defined at the 18th century. At best, we would have something like sexual inversion, but, like, so obviously, like, the character wouldn't be like, oh, by the way, I'm asexual because it's Victorian times, but let's actually, Well, you say that, but then at the same time, ancient Greece, I'm guessing, did exist in this timeline you're telling me about. Yeah.
So, it's...
I'm not saying that the gays don't exist, I'm saying they won't use the same language that we would,
Right, yeah. Yeah, no, I follow you there.
Yeah, so, it's like, and, if they want to, like, actually, and they can always, like, make up their own terms. I know that in my D&D world, I literally have a cultural term for asexuality that's just invented for, like, what the culture would think of it as. But anyway, I did want to mention that there is a sort of new cast of characters that they introduced after sort of the big first arc.
Real quick.
Yes.
Real quick. I'm going to just plug this for the sake of it. We're trying to start a D&D party. He's a DM. I'm a player / kind of. I co-write some stuff here and there on my own campaigns and stuff. We're looking for players, so hey, if you want to join the D&D game, let us know.
I mean, that definitely sounds pretty fun. There's only so many people that we can, like, guess, include for logistic reasons, but...
I'm just like, we can't find anybody right now, so I'm just gonna take a shot and pick out our D&D game
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it would always be, like, fun to, like, have... We could, like, always just do, like, a bonus episode and talk about, like, our D&D campaign and stuff like that, too. But, I wanted to mention a few more gays just because we haven't reached peak gayness yet. Basically, the writer and...
My bad.
Me just, like, systematically going through every single gay in this... But also, like, there's a lot of, like, homoerotic friendships where you're just, like, is it gay or just European, you know? And it makes sense because they're actually European. Oh, fuck, what's her name? I'm trying to find... Okay, it's written by Kate Ashwin, by the way, in case anybody gives a shit. Also, it's on Hiveworks, so good for her, sweetie. Do you know what Hiveworks is?
I do not.
It's a webcomic collective. If you read webcomics, like, you would definitely recognize the name. Wow, that sounds fishy, but basically she introduces a new set of characters.
I'm just gonna blow up my spot and speak of the red cool because I know it's fine, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. And basically, she's like, you know what, we haven't reached peak gay yet. You know, I wanted to add a few more characters just to, like, kind of play with some of these ideas. And so they include just the big ol' gays, which we love to see. Also, from, like, one of the non-canonical pages, one of the characters might be bisexual, but it's not, like, canonical, so, like, you know, maybe that's... I don't know. Possibly. But we also have, and we love to...
For sure.
Well, see, here's the thing, like, in one of, like, you know, the pages, they have all, like, the lovely gays in, like, a pride setting, and the characters, like, dressed in the bi flag, so I'm just, like, I didn't really get, like, any of, like, the opposite sex attraction in that, but, you know, obviously, bisexuals aren't defined by who they date, but it's, like, but we also include just a regular gay, as you will, and also trans representation in Victorian England. We love to see it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's just like, just there, and it's just like, oh, what about your friend, like, so-and-so? And the guy's just like, oh no, she goes, like, by this now, and the guy's just like, okay, like, whatever, that's her name. And it's just, you know, just subtle and there, and, like, that's just a character, and they're trans, and I'm just like, I always love to see that, you know, we are always standing for the gays' representations and all the other LGBTs. So it's like, so that's, like, kind of, like, mainly the three main reasons why I like it, just... The sort of, like, gaslight fantasy, the magic system, and the gays.
Okay, go.
Oh, no, that was it. What were you saying?
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just going to say that, like, totally down for representation. I'm more of a, just, like, non-intrusive, non-shoehorn or token way.
No, I feel that's fair, and I definitely dislike tokenism myself. I always just like to shout things out when, like, you know, they definitely make an effort to create diverse stories. I know as a writer, I try to think of ways, it's like, how can I make this a little bit less, I guess, monolithic, you know? Because the world isn't monolithic, so I always like to see it when people try, because...
Totally. I'm not saying anything you just described sounded token or shoehorn or anything. I'm just saying while we're on this topic, I just like stories of all kinds, as long as they're like a good story, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, I totally feel that, and I think especially if we're talking about representation, one thing I really dislike is, and this is really just boiling down to tokenism, is when you do have a person of color or a LGBT character, and their entire character is basically just being that identity. One egregious example that stands out to me on this topic is sci-fi's Truth or Dare. I have to say this because apparently there's 5 or 8 movies with that name, and I'm just like, why?
Okay, so it's a show on the channel Sci-Fi called
It was a
Truth or
movie.
Dare?
Yeah, it was a movie called Truth or Dare. No, I'm sorry. Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. Sci-Fi's Truth or Dare came out the year before. I mix them up all the time because they literally came out a year apart from each other, and they're basically the same. Blumhouse is much...
Okay, you're talking about Blumhouse's Truth or Dare, the really shitty movie.
Okay, they're all... I haven't seen the other 5 ones that deal with serial killers, but yeah, it was not good. But I always just think about, like, the Asian character whose literally entire plot of the movie is just, like, is gay, has dad. I think I used that exact phrase on my review of it. I'm just like, I don't... It's just, literally, they couldn't think of a single, like, just a little bit, like, more of a character, like, definition. Of course, I mean, this is also coming from a movie where literally one character's personality is just being an alcoholic, which, honey...
No, here's the thing with that. The whole impetus of that is that the dad gets possessed by the Truth or Dare demon, and, like, Truth or Dare's his son, and the son's, like, Truth, and it's implied that he came out to him, and then nothing happens afterwards. Like, it's supposed to be that, like, the dad's super homophobic, but then it's just the cliffhanger of, like, oh no, he's about to have to tell his dad that he's gay, and then nothing happens. Which
really sucks, because I think it's honestly just, it could have been a really impactful moment. I also really hate when they have an LGBT character, and they, like, kind of, like, make that the big stakes thing, but they don't, like, go far enough, and I'm just like, if you're going to, like, play, like, this sort of, like, character, this identity for, like, all the horrible shit that actually happens to LGBT characters, actually do it. There's this middle grade book called One of Us is Lying, and I'm gonna spoil this shit because the book sucks, and y'all just gonna have to deal with it. Like, basically one of the characters is a homosexual, and there's basically this thing where he's being blackmailed, just like in Pretty Little Liars. That's not spoilers, that happens in the first episode, but basically, it's going to be like, oh no, what happens if he gets outed, and he does, and nothing really happens? And that's not like the thing that happens to, like, all the characters, but I'm just like, you're going to put this over their head, it's like, you're not even going to it's not going to barely affect the character, even though for a lot of people that shit happens, it would definitely affect the character, and I'm just like, why even use this, and just not actually deal with what the effects would be. And obviously not for every LGBT person, but for many, there's definitely a lot of risk that comes out involving being outed. And so I'm just like, you're going to use it as a trope, but you're going to disrespect the actual impacts of what that would affect as a person. Especially, like, in a thriller, It's just... It pissed me off for a lot of other reasons, but that was a big one for me. They also used the phrase... internet handle on 4chan, which I will not have to explain to you why that's not correct. Yeah.
No, you said internet hacker known as 4chan?
No, looking up their username on 4chan. Yeah, this honey hasn't been on the internet.
Okay, I thought you were making a hacker known as 4chan joke.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was, like, in the sequel or something. No, there's literally an entire segment where they talk about how this character is on 4chan because they looked up their username and they found all the guy's posts. And also he was going to... Give me a second. He was going to go commit Not Alive as a form of school shooting because he was an incel. Yeah, it was... As you do. Just like as you do. Yeah, there's a lot, like, fucking wrong with the story. Like, I really don't know why it was popular, but maybe it's because middle schoolers don't have good taste. I'm not judging, I didn't have good taste as a middle schooler either, but I'm just saying, like, it was not a good story. Like, why are we supporting this woman?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think if there's, like... trying to think like where we should like go next in this like episode, because I think we're still kind of figuring out the format, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, then in that case, I'm gonna jump in right now and say because of the story, because of the podcast format, not because of the content itself, that sounds like it totally sucks because mine has math in it.
Wow, math? You know what else has math in it? A textbook. Also, most books, because the pages are numbered, I'm just saying. Well, you know...
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about. Those things are friggin' awesome.
I mean, I can't really judge considering that my laptop is on a shelf full of textbooks, and also a coffee table book of more great American mansions and their stories. Which came out in the 60s because I have a hoarding problem.
You're not supposed to bury yourself. You're supposed to cherry pick your points to make yours sound better.
Oh, my bad. I'm bad at arguing. No, you're wrong. I'm sorry to tell you. So I will have to say that you're incorrect, because what mine has is fancy Latin references to the history of the 7 deadly sins. You know, this hotel that the time-traveling baker was in is called the Hotel Gula, or also known as the Latin name for gluttony. It's a reference.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mine has pan-religious symbols from Christianity, Buddhism, what am I thinking of? Paganism. What else is there? There's an entire race of individuals based on it's kind of a combination of North American natives and India natives. There's a Chinese representative land to the far off east. There's a whole divide between Eastern and Western ideals when it comes to different forms of alchemy and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, there's some racial representation for you. Oh yeah, and a bunch of handicapped characters too, because everybody has robot limbs, because robot limbs are cool.
Okay, all of that sounds super fucking badass, but I haven't even told you about what the second act is about yet. Basically, it involves a 4th mysterious lodestone, and also Edwardian period, like, you know, spiritualism, so that's happening.
Okay, mysterious lodestones, starting to sound like One Piece.
I haven't watched One Piece, so I don't know.
There's a quest for mysterious lodestones. I don't know enough about it either. I'm just starting to grasp at straws here. Oh my god.
I mean, I think that's kind of the point of this segment. We just throw everything at the wall that's kind of interesting and niche about it.
Oh, yeah, no, friggin', here's something, all of the, what am I thinking of? Circles, okay, in mine, at least, circles are a big part of it. It has to do with, like, completeness of oneself, completeness of, one's energy and ideals. All the alchemy symbols are drawn as circles with different shapes and symbols on the inside. And all of the 7 deadly sin characters have a tattoo of an Ouroboros on it, which is the snake eating its own tail, and it has a hexagram on the inside of it. So that's for some mysticism.
Sorry, I'm just like being like really into like all that symbology. So like,
no, this thing has symbology out the ass.
Oh my gosh. So I think it's safe to say that like both of our like, you know, I don't know what the generic term for it would be, like medias, like options. What the fuck would we call these?
Yeah. Stories.
That's good. I think both of our stories have definitely some really strong suits, and definitely a lot of similarities just in between them. Especially like some that both fantastical, they both have magic systems, and they both obviously deal with the 7 deadly sins.
Sure, I'd say yours much more based in a contemporary idea, like a contemporary mindset, whereas mine, it's much more, I'm trying to think of, not all encapsulating, but, like, doesn't deal with a specific point in time. Mine kind of looks at time as kind of an infinite, and from there, it blends all the themes together.
Yeah. Yours is more like a fantasy setting that takes a lot of... Give me a second. Yours is more of a high fantasy setting that takes a lot of influence from medieval science and, like, magic systems, where mine is a specific time period that is utilizing some of the language, but is mostly a period piece.
Yeah. Mine is... Yeah, I'd say mine would be kind of a... I think if I could describe it, I'm going to try to chalk it up as much as I can. It's a look into oneself based off of the contrast between mysticism and science.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, that sounds like exactly my type of shit. But I think that's also like what really...
I definitely recommend reading it more than anything. Don't bother with the original series. Brotherhood, I've seen bits and pieces of it. It's definitely better, but it still didn't quite...
It's not a perfect adaptation of the source material.
Yeah, after I read the first one and how it hit me the way it hit me, it just couldn't match up, and it never really hit me the same way everybody else had it hit them. So I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring, say, if you haven't read it, go read it. It's not an incredible time sink. It's 108 chapters, but compared to other manga where friggin' One Piece just turned into, just a few weeks ago, came out with its 1,000th chapter. So,
Let's like the frickin' Simpsons at this point.
Yeah, just food for thought. Well, I mean, friggin' Oda's, I mean, from what I understand, Oda's kind of a goat when it comes to this. He doesn't take that much time off. He's pretty consistent with putting all this stuff out there. I mean, it's...
So what you're telling me is he's like the Andrew Hussey of mangakas.
The who?
The guy who wrote Homestuck is the guy like literally who made like the world's longest webcomic by himself.
At this point, I'm not going to get into Homestuck based on principle alone.
Fair.
Congratulations to Toby Fox. I know more about him than anything else Homestuck related, but I'm just not going to touch that thing. I can't physically.
No, run away. Run away from it.
Yeah.
It's too gay and it's too much of a meme.
It's just too much of a meme at this point.
The most insidious meme. Anyway, but please tell me more about like how he is the GOAT.
Oh yeah, no, from what I understand, just One Piece is a really good series, very long-lasting for a reason. Doesn't really overstay its welcome like I thought. This is coming from someone who read every single volume of Naruto. Read every single volume of Naruto.
Holy fucking shit!
Volumes. I will never forget it. That was 72 volumes, and I could not be more disappointed in the ending. There was so much cool stuff in that. Kankuro friggin' took out his femur and used it as a sword against Rock Lee, and then Gaara comes in with the sand boneyard and just crushes him to dust, and that is just the coolest. But, like, just so much stuff after that. No, it turns out it wasn't this guy's fault, it was that guy's fault. But no, that guy actually had a puppet master, but that puppet master had his own puppet master, who, so it wasn't any of their fault. Well, then whose fault was it? Oh, there was, this crazy, other super god puppet, but then it turns out that, like, all the super god's friends were mean to her and sent her away, so it was all those super god's friends that did, no, it's just past the buck. There's no actual, like, villain redemption. That's another thing I really like, when a villain gets their comeuppance in one of these stories. Naruto doesn't have anything like that. So,
you know, I think it's really something to say when we're talking about like an anime that actually ends very concisely, because I know, like, I was really into Inuyasha, and honestly, like, I liked the ending, but I wasn't, like, completely satisfied with the ending for a few reasons. It's just, if you go along, like, long enough, it's just, it either becomes, like, kind of, like, sitcom-y, or it just gets so much of the spectacle creep that it becomes, like, ridiculous to even, like, watch.
Right, yeah, that's definitely where Naruto ended up. It just became, there was so much power creep, and not even in, like, a campy way, like how Dragon Ball does power creep, so they kind of acknowledge how crazy it is. It just goes from like, kids having superpower fights in the first 2 or 3 volumes, to now these kids are 7 years older, and they are hurling literal planets at each other, and it's just trying to act all, like, the same amount of cool and serious, and it just doesn't
What?
It doesn't work.
You don't remember hurling planets at people in 8th grade gym class? That's totally realistic. Just like that very subtle pause there.
Hello?
You there? Hello?
Don't know when you're pausing for dramatic effect or we're cutting out in the audio. Again, sorry. This is kind of a slapdash setup that we have going here. We're doing this over Discord. I'm on POS laptop, talking through even POS ear headphones.
Yeah.
So it's a labor of love more than anything, and I don't know what love feels like.
Oh. I'm trying to think of something witty and, like, funny to retort to that, but honestly, I just want to give you a hug.
All kind of freak in the end.
Sorry, what was that last bit?
Through the internet.
Yes. Through the internet. Okay, so
Through the internet, oh no, I'm sick, and I can't taste anything because of the coronavirus.
So funny. Honestly, I always love it when, like, people on YouTube are just, like, drinking Corona beers, like, because I love just, like, how, like, ironically people, like, are drinking them. They're just, like, I mean, you have to, you know, but, I should probably give, like, you know, my closing statement. So first, just to let you know, that saint is whack. He totally didn't do any of those miracles, and that's why he shouldn't be canonized. There we go, play devil's advocate a little bit. Basically, for Windershins, if you like comics, and you like comics specifically about, like, you know, folklore, we mentioned American Gods briefly, that's a good one. Gunnery Court is probably the best comparison for any webcomic fans out there. I know you guys have read it if you're into webcomics. It's kind of like that, but it's all steampunky. Basically, that's the gist. If you like steampunk, if you like sort of like fantasy, folklore shit, you're going to get your fucking rocks off to this crap. And that's pretty much what's up. Short and sweet.
Sure. And if you like, what am I thinking of? science and magic mixed into one with some eldritch horror and not nearly as much steampunk, but kind of retro future aesthetic.
Well, it gets a technique to it.
I totally recommend checking out Fullmetal Alchemist. It's been around for a lot longer, but still somebody might not have taken the time to check it out. I'd say it's worth it. Same with,
Absolutely heathens.
Windershins.
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to be putting links to... Not sure how I'll put a link to Fullmetal Alchemist, but I'll figure something out. I'm going to be at least listing most of, like, you know, the media we talked about on this podcast, because we have Windershins, we have Fullmetal Alchemist, and we mentioned, like, maybe 8 or 10 different fucking things. So it's all going to be in the description box along with whatever.
I feel like we can just kind of focus on the two main points of topic and chalk the rest up to references and stuff.
Yeah. Now, there's definitely going to be, like... Yeah. And I'll show you a copy of, like, the description before I post it, just to make sure, okay? But,
Also, in the description, maybe you should, mention the Twitter, because I made a Twitter for us that it is in horrible disarray because I posted, like, 1 or 2 tweets and then forgot about it. For about a month and a half ago. So, the podcast does have a Twitter. It's at Spaghetti Motion. The S and M are capital. It's just spelled like the podcast title, Spaghetti Motion, no space. And I'm kind of the one in charge of it. If Ryan has anything he wants to say, I'll post it. And if I can just honestly think of anything, I'll post it.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I have a link for that. So if you want to send me a link, I'll get that in the description, and I'll also post a link to our Instagram and Facebook accounts, which is that all the social medias we have.
How do I post a link?
So if you're on your laptop, you're going to copy the link, and then you're going to paste it in Discord, and then I'll paste on there, and then I'll have to make sure that it's all correct on.
You can just put the at in the title description, can't you?
Oh, it should be able to, but if I have the full link, I can also hyperlink it, so...
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I also want to use that so I can update it on a YouTube page with the rest of the social media links, because they're in our description as well on the page. Yeah.
Okay, I'll see what I can do about that.
Yeah. No worries. Anyway, I'm thinking, is that all we really have for our sexy hunks today?
I think that is.
Okay.
I guess check out our social medias, whether they're personal or related to the podcast. We're trying to get a more concrete, like, the schedule still here and there. We're gonna post it just kind of whenever the mood strikes us.
Yeah.
Right now, I guess. But if you find some groundswell, if we get some devoted hunks, if we get some real hunks out there,
if we get some true hunks in this business,
some true codified hunks, then we can definitely work out a more religious schedule and I don't know, sink time and resources into better equipment setup, better stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, at the same time, we're just two nobodies starting this during, because pandemic boredom, basically.
Yeah. I mean, hey, we already have 3 subscribers / hunks, so I think we're basically internet famous. Tana Mojo, who? We don't know that bitch.
Internet fame, really? Watch Mojo is...
I said Tana Mojo, or Tana Mongoose, whatever the fuck her name is.
Oh. Yeah, I thought you said Watch Mojo. Like, in the year of our Lord 2021, you are bringing up Watch Mojo.
We definitely don't know them anymore. But how will I know what top 10 dangerous bisexuals in film are? Or top 10 movie... Like, Honestly, like, why are listicles even a thing anymore? I can't see ads anymore. I just block them out. They don't exist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, they had a series going for a while where they gave little rundowns on different superhero and supervillain origins. I like that from them, but they stopped being relevant, so whatever.
See, I feel like Watch Mojo is kind of like BuzzFeed. Like, it's enjoyable content, but it's like, it's meant to be enjoyable, but it's like ultimately meaningless.
Yes, they're both hot takes. They're both pretty vapid mediums at this vapid.
But like, see, here's the thing though. It's like, I would rather watch like BuzzFeed articles than like Troom shit, you know? Because, sure, like they're both content farms.
Yeah, Troom. Don't even mention Troom. It's not very.
Cypress overlords. No, but it's like they're both like content farms, but at the same time, I'd rather some like, you know, poor hack writer who's literally drank 15 Red Bulls at this point, like literally just like, what's the word I'm looking for? I wanted to say busted up, but that's very graphic. Just throw an article together in like 20 minutes about whatever, like, you know.
Okay.
That's like, you know, the idea that popped in my head. Then just like somebody makes some like banal.
Because you're dropping in and out something appears.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying, like, I'd rather have like Watch Mojo just put together like a shitty like listicle than have Troom put together 25 concrete DIY hacks that will blow your mind. Why would I want to do any of those? Who thinks I play with cement so much that I want to make a planter out of it?
Thank you very much.
Okay, if you want to make that ugly-ass planter with 15 egg cartons that you just have on hand, like, go ahead. The only thing I actually want to do was when they did, like, this dress forum with cement. That actually looked fun.
Power drill battery and 2 forks on hand.
What the hell am I gonna do with that? Please tell me it's not to, like, spin spaghetti onto a fork.
You're not gonna have a power drill battery and 2 forks on you.
What? Oh no.
I'm gonna cut us off right here because you're cutting in and out of I can only hear like half of every other word you say, and also we're talking about Watch Mojo, so that's really more of a statement about us than anything else. So thank y'all for listening. If you are listening,
thank you all of our sexy hunks.
Take care. Yeah, take care of your sexy hunks.
Bye-bye. Okay, I'm gonna end the stream now.